My name is Amy Campbell, and I brought in a Civil War Bible. This was owned by my great-great-great-uncle. The item came into my possession from my great-grandmother. I think it was an issue that the American Bible Society gave to Civil War soldiers at the time, and I know a little bit about his military record, but I don't know a lot about the Bible itself.
Prior to the Civil War, slavery was legal in 15 of 34 states. The economy of the southern states had been built on the backs of black slaves who tended cotton, tobacco, and other crops for white slave owners. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency in 1860, promising to prohibit the expansion of slavery into more states. Slave-owning states declared their secession from the U.S. to form the Confederacy, and 4 years of war ensued. Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to the Union Army in April 1865. Lincoln was assassinated the following week, but his Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution abolished slavery. 4 million black Americans were now free.
We're here with Amy Campbell, who has graciously brought in a valuable family artifact that's been in your family for many generations now. I was wondering if you could tell us something about this just as we get started.
Well, this is a Bible that was carried by my great-great-great-uncle, Charles Freeman Jensen, during the American Civil War. And it was given to me by my great-grandmother on her passing.
This is an excellent example of a Civil War sort of soldier's Bible.
Would he have actually carried that in battle, or would that have just been something that he would have kept in camp or something?
So I'd say he probably kept that quite close to him. And he maybe, again, just given the size of it, he could have kept it in his pocket. You can see is, again, this very well thumbed. There's like a nice little repair here on the side where the cover and the binding is done. Do you know where he came from, like what town he might have enlisted in, or?
It's northern Indiana, so I imagine it would be somewhere along northwestern Ohio.
You can see he has a high collared uniform on, and the buttons are quite tight. Now in the Federal Army, New York infantry regiments used to wear what they call a shell jacket and had a lot of buttons. But outside of that, most of the Federal Army after a while, especially by Nashville, they're wearing what they call a sack coat for the most part. Especially in Nashville and Tennessee, that's called the Western Theater. And if he was born in Indiana and raised in Ohio, that puts him right well into that sort of, that avenue again of what they call the Western Theater, the battles like in Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, all that down there in those deep southern states.
Well, I learned a little bit more about my great-great-uncle and that he was probably a gunner. I found it really interesting when Kevin pointed out the field repair on the binder of the Bible. That sort of made it more personal to him, I think.
With that, he is one of the millions of young Americans that'll take up arms for the battle to maintain the Union, and which will eventually, of course, bring an end to slavery in North America. Now, you might already be aware of this. Halifax has a big part in, there's a lot of Civil War connections in Halifax, okay?
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, Halifax, like the United States, is kind of a city divided over the question of the American Civil War. The British garrison that is here is very supportive of the Confederacy.
Oh.
Yeah, they embrace this aspect of that this is a small army taking on a giant. When the war begins and the blockade starts on southern ports, Halifax is here. Again, you have blockade runners that will come in here to take on water. You have commerce raiders that come in here as well. One of the last ones, again, is the famous Confederate ship Tallahassee that sailed in here in 1863. Again, Halifax is very much connected to the Civil War. It's these threats during and after the Civil War that finally gets the Charlottetown sort of meeting, and they sign the beginning of Canada. So religion does play a big part in a lot of people's lives. When they go into battle, if they should fall, they've been given absolution before this happens. In their belief system, they're all going to go right to heaven. Do you know how old he was by chance when he enlisted? Is anything in the story there? He looks quite young.
Yeah, he was young. I don't know exactly, but I think he was less than 20 would be my guess. So he had an older brother that enlisted as well, so I sort of wonder if they just enlist together as brothers might.
Yeah, it's very common. And you'll get like, on both sides of that conflict, you have like brothers, cousins, groups of friends, they'll all go off and they'll serve in a state or a county raised regiment. So with that, if he was a gunner, which what that kind of looks like by that uniform potentially, and given that there's no history or tradition that he was ever in the cavalry. Western theater, there's a lot of illness and the heat, hard to find water a lot of times. It's a horrendous part of the war. The Southern armies, especially after major battles, they'd have literally like revival movements within the army and people would find religion. And again, and as the war goes on and casualties mount and people are at the war a long time, hundreds of thousands of people will find some solace in what they have as a faith practice. If they're going to go be killed in the next sort of onslaught or die of disease, they want to be literally a little closer to God. So these Bibles are designed as well to literally be carried in a breast pocket. So that is very atypical size of a soldier's Bible. I'd like to thank you, Amy, for bringing in this valuable piece of your family history, and again, an important event in North American history.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you very much for telling me more about it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for bringing it in. I think that Bible is quite an extraordinary artifact. You can see it's been passed down and kept lovingly by that family. And again, the care that's gone into keeping it, you can tell it means a lot to their family.
A war in one country can have an impact on another, and so we're all very connected by military action and by our neighbors or overseas. When we think of military artifacts, I think it's interesting to think of things, not just guns and swords, but Bibles and other things that would have kept soldiers, given them comfort when they were fighting.